Episode 17 fades in on the coffee table in the Anima Arc house, only for the quiet to be disrupted by a large binder slamming down onto it. On the couch across from the table sit Weiss, Blake, and Yang, all staring in disbelief at the binder, with the camera panning up to a smug-looking RWBY who is vibrating with energy. Weiss sighs and pinches her brow. Oh dear lord, not this again. Blake furrows her brow. Did you bring this all the way from Beacon? RWBY nods, saying, Yep. You never know when you're gonna need a good idea to pass the time. Yang, flipping through the book, comments, half of these are Vale specific. She looks more closely to the list and points to one, saying, This place even burned down. RWBY hops on her heels. We can adapt. It's more flexible than you think. Blake adds, RWBY, half of these are already crossed off. RWBY shrinks into herself and rubs the back of her neck. Yeah, well, I mean, I sorta already did some of them with Ranger, Juniper, Junior, Team Junior. Blake glares at RWBY and she's quick to correct. Hey, that doesn't mean we can't still do some of these things together. That's what's important, right? Doing these things together and valuing our time together? Blake sighs and crosses her arms before saying, We'll go. She opens one eye and smiles softly. If you cut down on the togethers. RWBY pops on her feet. I make no promises. Yang shrugs and seems to become infected by RWBY's mood. Good enough for me. Where do we start? Well, RWBY drawls, pointing to the list. First I thought we'd hit up the beach. We cut to a close-up of RWBY dressed in a surf suit wearing an inner tube facing the ocean. Only for the camera to pan back and reveal a rocky, pebbly beach. A cold wind blows and RWBY turns around, shivering. Alright gang, last one in's a rotten egg. We pan over to the other three, all looking bemused at RWBY, and all of them are still in their normal clothing. RWBY pouts and through chittering teeth says, Oh, you guys didn't get changed. Weiss says, RWBY, it's freezing out. Yang squints out into the ocean. I think those are icebergs. RWBY turns to look and says, Nah, those are seagulls. No, you're right. Those are icebergs. She turns back to them and hops on her feet. Come on guys, it can't be that bad. Here, I'll prove it to you. As team leader, I'll go first. We immediately hard cut to a cafe where RWBY is draped in a blanket and shivering while drinking down hot chocolate. Weiss is shaking her head. I can't believe you actually jumped in there. RWBY sneezes and sips her drink. It's spring. It's supposed to get warm. Blake, deadpan, says, It's fall. RWBY's brows furrow. What? But the spring festival? RWBY, we crossed the equator, Blake elaborates. RWBY pauses for a moment before having a realization. Oh. Blake stares at RWBY with some level of amused disbelief. Forgot about that? RWBY shrinks into herself. Forgot about that. Blake snorts and shakes her head with a smile. RWBY perks back up and says, through her sniffling, Well, hey, at least it worked out well with our second stop. How's the tea? Blake hums happily as she drinks it. It's good. Some of the best I've had. You picked well. RWBY blushes and smiles proudly while Yang agrees, downing her own drink. Yeah, I don't normally like this kind of fancy stuff, but it really rocks. Weiss looks at Yang in disgust. Did you even let that cool? Yang shrugs. No? Weiss shakes her head when a waitress comes over and places a slip of paper on the table. Thank you for coming. Here's the bill. You all have a nice day. Weiss looks at the bill and says, that's actually pretty reasonable. I'll cover this. She reaches for her purse, but pauses and purses her lips in consternation. She sits back up and pushes the bill to RWBY, saying, Actually, I left my wallet at home in Atlas. Thanks for treating us, RWBY. RWBY takes the bill and her eyes bug out. Yang sees this and takes it out of her hand. Oh, how bad could this be? Oh. That's a lot of zeros. We cut to outside the cafe where the four are slinking to Bumblebee and RWBY's scooter. RWBY says, Thanks for picking up the rest of the tab, Blake. You didn't have to do that. Blake just replies, somewhat good-naturedly, I did, or else you guys would be washing dishes for the rest of the day. RWBY sighs as she gets on her moped. Well, sorry about this, Weiss, but I don't think we'll be going shopping today. Weiss gets on the scooter behind her, saying, Well, I guess we can save that one for later. Where's the last place we're going? RWBY hems and haws. Well, it's a little early, but I think it'll still work. We cut to Team RWBY standing inside a dimly lit room. RWBY jumps in place. I know how much Yang loves to dance. The camera pans out to an almost completely empty nightclub, save for the bartender and one man whose motto is, It's 5 o'clock somewhere. RWBY continues, "And we never got to go to one together, so I thought we'd give it a shot." The three look confounded at RWBY, and Yang says, "I usually come to these kinds of places at night?" RWBY pouts, waving her arms for emphasis. "I know that. We were supposed to have a whole shopping trip and get here in the evening, but you know." The three look at her and she runs onto the dance floor, the panels of which light up when she steps on them. "Look, we can still have fun here. We don't need a whole bunch of people. Check it out, the floor here even lights up when you stand on it." She looks down at the floor and you can even see the gears turning inside of her head. "I bet I can actually spell my name." Weiss steps forward as RWBY begins to use her semblance. "RWBY, no, stop, you just got your brace off." Weiss begins to chase after RWBY, only for RWBY to trip halfway through the R of her name. Weiss stops halfway and stares absently at RWBY, unamused, only for Yang behind her to start laughing. Blake glances over at Yang like she's gone crazy, only to start laughing herself. It's infectious as Weiss begins to laugh too. RWBY is nursing her leg when Yang walks up, still laughing, and offers her a hand up. "Come on, Rubes, let's dance." RWBY looks up and takes the hand. A special thanks goes out to all of my wonderful patrons for supporting the channel. If you like this content and want more of it, please consider supporting it. Also consider picking up my new action-adventure novel, The Artificer, which is now available for purchase on Amazon in digital and in print. With that all said, back to your regularly scheduled fixing. We cut to outside the club in the early evening where a line of people are starting to enter. Yang exits first, saying, "I'm wiped." And RWBY adds, "Too bad we wore ourselves out, looks like the party's really starting to pop in there." Yang adds back, "Nah, they were cramping our style." Blake tacks on, "Also, Weiss broke the floor, so it's probably for the best that we left." Weiss huffs and crosses her arms. "It's not my fault they didn't build that floor for heels." Yang shoots back, "Weiss, it's a dance floor. It's explicitly built for heels." Weiss snaps back, "Then why did I get my heel stuck?" Blake laughs, "Because you can't dance." Weiss goes red and growls, and RWBY says, "Nothing good comes from heels." Yang snorts and says, "Just because you're no good in them, RWBY, but next time you'll just have to have Weiss teach you." RWBY slows to a stop and says, "Next time? Is there going to be one? I thought today went awful." Her eyes fall to her toes, and there's a pause before Blake steps up to her and wraps RWBY in a hug, followed shortly by Yang and Weiss. Blake says, "Oh, it was awful, but I think it's exactly what we needed." Yang adds, "I haven't laughed like that in a long time." Weiss shakes her head and says, "Only you can make a day like that fun. We love your terrible plans." RWBY tears up and fully embraces the three, sniffling out, "You think my plans are terrible?" The four begin to giggle, only to be cut off by the ringing of their scrolls, staggered out almost simultaneously. The four break apart, and there's a generalized alert from the municipal government about a breach in the wall. The four turn to look at the wall in the distance and see smoke rising from a part of it. RWBY's scroll gets a call, and Cordovan's face appears on it. "You are needed at the wall. What forces we have are already en route, but we need all hands on deck immediately." RWBY tries to follow up, asking, "What are we faced?" But Cordovan has already ended the call, leaving them with unanswered questions. They all look to each other and RWBY says, "You heard the lady, let's go." Everyone puts on their game faces and the two pairs ride off on their vehicles. We cut to them getting closer to the smoking part of the wall, the smoke visible over the rooftops. RWBY starts pre-planning with her team. "Okay, so local Grimm are Manticores, Beowulfs, and Ursa, but none of them should be majors this far north, only minors. What we have to watch out for, I think, should be aged Manticore. They can still be pretty smart, like back at the train." Yang yells forward, "Think this is related to the lamp?" RWBY shakes her head. "We'll find out later." The group turn a corner and pull up to a plaza built next to one of the doors on the wall, discovering the door sliced clean off its hinges. Grimm are flooding into the city, and while that's alarming, it's not as overwhelming as, say, the fall of Beacon. This is far more similar to the breach, though still shy of what we saw back in Fixing Volume 2. That said, what is more alarming are the number of wounded and dead soldiers and huntsmen littering the plaza, having been sliced and diced. The camera pans up to where one huntsman is facing down a figure in the smoke. Team RWBY rush forward up the road to the bend as the huntsman runs towards the figure. Time almost freezes as the man and the smoke are both cut clean in two, revealing Adam, beat up, torn up, and enraged. Team RWBY hit the brakes, screeching to a stop, the squeal of their wheels catching Adam's attention. Like before on the train, there's a beat where their eyes meet. Adam's jaw droops with surprise before he rushes towards them. RWBY screams, "Floor it!" and the four take off down the bend of the road. As the four burn rubber, Adam jets off after them. What follows is an intense chase sequence as Team RWBY have to maneuver through gridlocked and panicked traffic, while the ever-agile Adam jumps from car roof to truck roof using his boosted aura to keep pace. Notable moments here include Adam cleaving through cars with broad, swift swings of his blade, and Weiss using her glyphs to repulse a manticore that charged deeper into the city. While they're riding, our four heroes agree that luring Adam to the boot is their best bet to stop him. This is just before the midpoint of the chase where RWBY and Weiss are separated by a truck crossing an intersection, leaving Blake and Yang to evade Adam all on their own. RWBY screams over the chaos, "We'll meet you there!" Weiss and RWBY try to maneuver through side streets and traffic, and Weiss complains, "We're getting nowhere, I can run faster than this!" RWBY blinks and brakes in the middle of the street. Weiss is flummoxed, almost losing her balance. "RWBY, what are you doing?" She replies, "I can run faster than this, Weiss!" She begins to pull the moped off to the side of the road, and Weiss says, "Then why aren't we going now?" RWBY snaps, "Weiss, we literally can't afford to lose this moped." RWBY locks the moped in place as Weiss tries to complain again, only for RWBY to snap, "Weiss, snowdrift!" Weiss flounders for only a second before summoning a haste glyph and jumping on RWBY's back. "Can your leg take this?" And RWBY says anxiously, "We'll find out," before bursting forward at breakneck speeds. Back with Blake and Yang, Adam is closing in, but Blake is managing to keep him at bay with Gamble on its ribbon. The blade and the gun intermittently cut through cars, shatter windows, score buildings, and Blake just barely manages to pull it back before it hits a civilian on the streets. Ahead of them is the bottom of the hill, but there's a buildup of traffic preventing them from getting through. Blake comments, "We need to get across that bridge before he hurts anyone else." Yang, seeing a parked tow truck, tells Blake to hang on as she guns the throttle. Blake yelps as Bumblebee speeds down the road and they ramp off the tow truck's bed. However, it was at a lower angle and they graze the top of the last car of the gridlock, sending them tumbling sideways. The two are flung from the bike while it skids off to the side. Blake uses her ribbon to catch her and Yang on a traffic light. Still, the two fall in a heap, rolling to a stop near the base of the bridge. The camera goes to the traffic, where Adam springs off a building's wall to stab down at Blake, only for a blur of red to slam into him from the side, sending him tumbling to the asphalt with a flaring aura. RWBY and Weiss stumble to a stop and RWBY collapses in pain, gripping her leg. Weiss kneels down to help her, only for RWBY to wave her off. "No! Adam! Focus on Adam! I'll cover you!" Pulling out Crescent Rose in its rifle mode. Weiss reorients just in time to dodge out of the way of Adam's blade. A second swipe sends Weiss rolling and Adam quickly turns his ire to the prone RWBY. RWBY gets one shot off before he brings his blade down on her, and from her sitting position she deflects his blade using the flat side of Crescent Rose, her aura flashing over the three subsequent strikes. Yang bull rushes into Adam's side, knocking him away from RWBY. Adam spins with the momentum and slashes the ground as he does. In slow motion, Yang and Adam come face to face, and she begins to lock up, her body unresponsive as his blade comes closer and closer, only for Gamble to cut across his face and wrap around his arm to yank him aside. Weiss summons a glyph to pull RWBY and Yang back to where she and Blake are standing, while Adam stumbles away off kilter. The five combatants compose themselves and Adam stands to his full height, as the black ribbon around his face falls away, revealing a Schnee Dust Company brand over his burned out left eye. The four stare in horror, Weiss especially, at not just the mark but also the wild look in Adam's good eye as it zeroes in on them. Adam charges forward as the girls raise their weapons. He fires Wilt into Yang's face, jumps over Weiss's stab, spin kicks Blake in the face, and lands on RWBY's neck with one smooth motion. Weiss uses a gravity glyph to make RWBY weightless, and Blake pulls her away, leaving Adam unbalanced. Yang attempts to throw a punch at him, but with her unsteady state, he dodges and slams Blush into her gut, tossing her aside. Weiss is left alone, raising her rapier, only for Adam to batter it aside with a single swing and rest his blade at Weiss's throat. She freezes, and he looks to Blake, growling, "Everyone dies." A moment later, there's a zapping noise. Adam's eyes roll back, and he collapses like a stone, leaving Weiss to exhale with a sigh of relief. As he drops, behind him is Cordovan with a still crackling cattle prod. She sneers at him and delivers the line we end the episode on. "Welcome to August, animal."